Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Mission Admission 2021. Today, we will be discussing careers in architecture. This Mission Admission session on careers in architecture is presented in association with Savita College of Architecture and Design, Chennai. I'm Farheen Hussain from the Times of India, Bengaluru, and co-hosting this session with me is my colleague, Shruti Susan Ullas. Welcome, Shruti. So let's kickstart the session by introducing our esteemed panelists that we have today. First, we have Dr. Om Prakash Bhavne, who is the current principal of RV College of Architecture. Sir has earned his bachelor's degree in architecture from Maulana Azad College of Technology, master's from University of Roorkee, and a PhD from Vinayaka Missions University. He went on to serve as a lecturer and also headed the School of Architecture at BTA College of Engineering in Gulbarga for nearly a decade. Dr. Bhavne is associated with the RV College of RV School of Architecture, Bangalore since 1996. First as a senior professor and then as a dean. In 2015, the RV School of Architecture was upgraded as a full-fledged standalone college of architecture with VTU Belagavi. And since then, Sir has served as the first principal of this institute. Sir has also been associated with the Council of Architecture in different capacities. Welcome, sir.
Pleasure being on this platform. Thank you, Ms. Farheen.
Thank you. Next, we have with us Janvi Ashar, a senior project architect at Venkat Ramanan Associates. Janvi has a B.Arch degree from Kamla Raheja Vidyanidhi Institute of Architecture, Mumbai, and a master's of urban design and development from the University of New South Wales, Australia. Janvi has substantial exposure to architectural and interior projects of varied scales. Her project responsibilities include involvement in the schemes from schematic design to project delivery, including design development and detailing. Welcome, Janvi.
Thank you.
And
good to be here.
Same. It's lovely to have you here. And now we have Professor Durganand Balsava with us, who is the Dean of Savita College of Architecture and Design. Professor Balsava has graduated from CEPT and ETH Zurich and worked in the studio of Pritzker laureate B.V. Doshi. He's taught in both national and international schools of architecture. Welcome, Professor Balsava.
Thank you. Honored to be on this panel today.
Same. It's wonderful to have you all here. Next, I would like to request Shruti to take over the session. Over to you, Shruti.
Thanks, Farheen. I think we'll kick off our conversation now. For those of you who are watching us, if you have any questions, just post them on the Facebook chat box. We'll take them once we are done with our set of questions. I think we'll start off with Professor Bhavne. So can you tell us, briefly give us a history of architecture education globally and in India?
See, if you look at the history of architectural education in our country, it appears that the architectural profession and architectural programs in Indian University have picked up very recently. But if you look at the history of the architectural education as a formal education at the university level, the history goes back to almost more than 250 years back, where in 1754, the Royal Danish Academy started Academy of Painting, Sculpture and Building. So this is the oldest school I can say in the Europe which started architectural education in a very formal manner. Okay, but then we look at the scenario in UK. Around 170 years back in 1847, Architectural Association started AA School of Architecture in London. So in UK, this was the first school to start a formal program in architectural education. But when you look at the scenario in US, until 1868, there was no architectural school in USA. It was MIT for the first time in 1868, it started the Department of Architecture. So you can say that it is almost 150 years back, the architectural education formally started at university level in USA. In 1905, Texas A&M University, they started a College of Architecture. So if you look at the history of architecture, architectural education at global level, I think the architectural discipline is being taught for a very long time. But earlier, before that also, the people were practicing architecture, but it was like an internship that the master training his disciples and they are taking forward the profession. But at the university level, of course, you can say that the history of architectural education is almost 250-year old. Okay. Now, if you look at what is the scenario in our country, the program in architecture, it was actually called the draftsmanship program, which was started at JJ College of Arts in 1913. 1913, you can say that it is almost 110 years back, 108 years back. So it was a kind of a diploma program. It is just to train the architectural assistants. It was not actual a degree program, but later on it became a government diploma program. And today the school is known as the Sir JJ School of Architecture, where the bachelor, master, and the PhD programs are being offered. Okay. Subsequently, in the state of Hyderabad, in Hyderabad in 1940, the School of Arts and Crafts was started. It was again at polytechnic level institution, and diploma program was offered there. And now we can see that the same diploma institution has flourished to the status of called the Jawaharlal Nehru Fine Arts and Architecture University, JNFAU. Okay, so and then now what we know as a School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi, it has a very humble beginning. In 1941, Delhi Polytechnic started a course in architecture and town planning. This was again a government diploma program, and now you can see that humble start of a polytechnic has turned into a full-fledged university level institution called School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi, offering a bachelor's program, mini master's program, and the PhD programs. And in 1949, in West Bengal, the Bengal College of Engineering, they started Department of Architecture and Town Planning. That institution is now a deemed university status of an institution. CEPT was started, one of the most reputed institution across the country, across the world. It was started in 1962. So I think that now the architectural education in India has matured, because it has the history of more than 100 years. So gradually the architectural education in India has stabilized and it has taken a shape. And we have the institution which are offering the programs which are well recognized across the world. Okay, now today in India, if you look at, we have more than close to 500 institutions across the country, close to 500 institutions. The good thing that has happened in India now, that we have an apex body called the Council of Architecture, and the Council of Architecture assumes a very important role. The Council of Architecture was established under the Architect Act 1972, and this act authorizes, empowers the Council of Architecture to ensure that every institution is offering the education in architecture which meets certain minimum standard of education as prescribed by Council of Architecture. So I think this is the brief history of how the architectural education started across the world and the status in India as of now. So as I told you, we have close to 500 schools offering the bachelor's program in architecture.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Over to you, Professor Balsavar. For those students who are watching us, what are the qualities that architecture demands from a student?
Sure, thank you. Let me take off from what Dr. Bhavani just described very beautifully as the base or the historic antecedents. Now, this year particularly, because of the prolonged pandemic, because of various other issues, the 12th standard, the position of the 12th standard exam, I think we are beginning to see that parents and students are almost requiring more information on what the different courses are. I'm not discussing only architecture, but different courses, because I think we are in the middle of a very historic transformation of society. A situation like the pandemic has never ever happened on this earth before at the scale we are experiencing. And that will have an impact on each profession. It will have an impact on the future of the profession. And in that context, I think we need to reassess, where does architecture stand? What does architecture hold for us? What this 5-year course is about. And I think that's what parents or students want to know. Now, the core, as we see it, of an architectural practice, which even Dr. Bhavani kind of alluded to, I think there are two or three very, very strong pillars of architecture. One is creativity. The other is, in very simple terms, I'm discussing, it's a combination of art and science. So you have creative thinking, but you also have pragmatic thinking. And therefore, it becomes a holistic discipline. I have my lawyer, and a very famous lawyer. You know, he often calls me and says, I wish I'd been an architect, because, you know, I would have enjoyed life more. And of course, so that architecture has freedom, architecture has creativity, architecture has pragmatism. And the 5-year course really is about how do you awaken your 5 senses, because we need to know how do we inhabit this earth. And there's Dr. Juhani Pallasmaa, who often says that human beings have built our architecture for only 70,000 years. And if you see animals, maybe for millions of years. So an animal will build very intuitively the same nest, the same web that a spider builds, and that's their architecture. But a human being has that creative mind and says, no, let me try this. Let me look at that. Let me try that. So when I think the architecture course, if we want to say anyone who is curious, anyone who is dreaming, but anyone who is also dreaming and wants to convert that, translate that dream into reality, I think then architecture is the right vocation for them, because it's really about how do you inhabit the planet. How do you, and with climate change, I think architects are now becoming more aware of the environment, more aware of plants, more aware that there are other species. It's not only the human race which inhabits the earth. And I think that kind of a laboratory I see as a school of architecture. And because of this, I think I will come back to it, and I think your future questions address it, so I won't talk about it. But because of this, future prospects of architecture are infinite. And we can discuss those future prospects, see what they are. And I think, in short, because it's an interdisciplinary course, our own school at Savita is enriched, because we're working with engineering, we are working with virtual reality, we are working with healthcare, there are doctors there, we're working with liberal arts, so we're looking at cultural processes. So I think it's a very, all schools, it's not just, I think all schools of architecture provide that kind of a integrated, holistic. But definitely for that, I think before any myths are there, along with the dream, if any profession wants to convert dream into reality, I think there is even perspiration and hard work. So it's not just sitting and dreaming and looking into the sky. Of course, it begins that way, but it is some hard work which is very enjoyable. So I asked my students, do you think Dhoni, I'll just end with it. I asked my students, do you think Dhoni enjoyed his World Cup victory with hard work, or, you know, I think it's an enjoyable course. So if I can put it that, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Over to you, Ms. Asher. You know, what are the plus points of a career in architecture?
Well, many. And like Professor put it, you know, even in architectural education, we're looking at a large spectrum from creative to pragmatic. And profession really takes off from there. What architecture school does, and beautifully at that, you know, it prepares you to actually follow whatever path that you would want to go. So an architectural education is not really an end in itself. It's only a beginning of what you want to do. And I mean, I don't know of a lot of courses that once you finish, you actually feel you don't know what you really want to do, which is the beauty of it, because, you know, it puts the onus back onto you to figure out. Architecture is looked at as an intervention in the spatial domain, to, like, you know, briefly sum it up what we are looking at. But again, the spectrum with which you can intervene or work at it is largely varied. So it you know, if I have to very curtly put it, from product design to designing cities, you could do anything. Architectural education, 5 years, puts you at a pedestal from where you can determine what level you want to go. which is the beauty of it, because, I have been practicing for 20 odd years now, but I will assure you there is never a dull day, because I'm not doing I'm not doing right now what I did 5 years back or 15 years back. It is always a change. Projects change, people you work with change, what you dabbled in changes. Today I might work on an interior scheme, tomorrow I might work on a master plan. So, and it's always, I think architectural education really throws up a great challenge, because I don't think the schooling system that we have today makes you think as much as what you need to think on your first day in college. And you really question, like, oh my God, nobody even asked me to think like this, which is good, because I think it is, in very profound terms, a path to self discovery. It gives you that kind of leverage, and what you make out of it is, what you are good at. So there will never be, you finish 5 years, you go to an office and say, today I have become an architect, I'm going to do this. No, I mean, even 20 years later, I will probably, be doing very, very different things, which is nice, because, you are at pace with how the world is moving. There is never a dull day at work. So I think in that way, it gives you a chance to, it's a gamut of possibilities, it is so open-ended. And I don't think I knew that as a student when I got into it. I just knew I was not going to be an engineer. I was going to be an architect, which felt slightly different, but I don't think I really knew what it was. And I'm glad I didn't know, because every day is now, and okay, after certain years, you reach a level where you're comfortable with doing a certain set of things. So you would explore that more. So yeah, I mean, I think it has a lot of ups and downs. Like when you win a competition project, it's probably the biggest high, but a deadline is the lowest low. So, and I think after a point, it is very addictive, because you live for that. You live for these range of emotions. It's fun. I mean, architecture, yeah, it should be fun, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that was some interesting conversation there. Professor Bhavani, some say architecture is grueling in terms of its course and as well as the career. Do you agree? I mean, are there any aspects of the career or the course that you want to highlight for students?
I won't like to endorse this idea of being the architecture program or the profession being tagged as or being identified as a grueling course or the grueling profession. It is not like that, because this is sometime, if you try calling the program grueling or the profession grueling, probably sometime it has a negative impact on the minds of the people who are aspiring to be an architect. Okay, and especially the parents, who also play a very important role in the decision taking. So what I would like to say here, that see, architecture is an act of creativity, and which is always the pleasant indulgence. So like rightly put by Professor Balsawar, that if you ask Dhoni that when he makes a century, which is a hard work, but it is at the end he enjoys it, isn't it? So the point here is that as long as you are indulging in the act which gives you pleasure, which gives you joy, it is never a say grueling or say tiring or exhausting. I don't think so. So I would desist from calling the profession or the course as a grueling or the exhausting, this one. But because here, as long as you're enjoying, the point is that if you stop enjoying what you're doing, then anything looks burdensome. So you should enjoy what you're doing. And I think that once you're opting for this particular course or this particular profession by choice, so I don't think any reason for not enjoying it, isn't it?
Got it.
But yes, what happened, there is a systematic, well-structured program which every graduate has to undergo. And there are academic requirements. So of course, you have the submissions, you have the deadlines in the academics also, and you have to meet those requirements. So sometimes that puts you under pressure. But as long as you are enjoying as a student, it is never say exhausting or the tiring or cumbersome kind of indulgence. Okay. Now, another thing, let me tell you that the profession is not, it has now changed. The education, the practices in educational campuses have changed. The practices in the professions have also changed. Because earlier they used to involve in the architects used to involve in the say long hours in drafting the plan, drafting the sections, etc. Now you have the digital tools available, software tools available, which makes your job easy. Because earlier, you know that hundreds, you might be spending hours together to render a plan or to render an elevation or something like that, which can be quickly done using the digital tools now. Okay, so the thing is that of course, but the profession is demanding, as Janvi put it. Profession is demanding because there is deadline with the clients. There's a deadline with the sponsoring parties, another thing, and on that day you have to burn override your midnight oil, what you say, and you have to see that you are ready for the presentation. So it is never going to be all that easy, because the world is very competitive and demanding. So if you want to come up as an architect, of course, you have to meet the expectations of your clients, you have to meet the expectations of the authority and the other challenges. But I would say that, yes, let us desist from, say, calling the course as a exhaustive or the tiring or this one, but that is the requirement of the course. And let me tell you, last 200 years, the course has been like this. But the good thing now is that you have a lot of digital tools available, software tools available, which makes your life much easier and which saves a lot of your physical efforts. So this is what I would like to put forth.
Thank you. Thank you. Professor Balsa, once a student completes his course, what are the various career options that they have?
This is a very significant aspect on what are the future prospects. I would like to deal with it at both levels. One is future prospects, and how does the 5 years of the School of Architecture, the undergraduate, prepare us for this future prospects. So both. Now, if you look at it, I think yesterday I mentioned another webinar that there are some of the best musicians who are architects. Asterix and Obelix, you know, the comic which is in our imagination is architects. I know CEOs of very large corporates, including, if I can place on record, Mr. Ratan Tata is an architect. Mr. Anand Mahindra has completed a part architecture course. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because the broad-based nature of the course, its interdisciplinary aspect, opens up future prospects in many ways. So one prospect that is known to most is one can join a respected practice, learn, design buildings, design landscapes, design large infrastructure. So that's a kind of a known trajectory. But I have friends today who are working in Hollywood, who are working with film directors like Mr. Mani Ratnam in conjuring imaginations of sets. And they are combining digital technologies with this aspect of filmmaking. So they're getting into filmmaking, they're getting into digital technologies. Many of the, I would say, eminent practices are now being invited in Princeton and Harvard and Cambridge to actually work collaboratively on artificial intelligence programs. And I mean, for instance, you know, if someone has transformed something, you say he was the architect of the nation. We don't say he was the chartered accountant of the nation, or he was the, you know, you always say he was the architect of this. Now, the word architect holds this kind of a interdisciplinary promise. So if I can specifically just quickly put down, one, of course, so, you know, in our times, I say the 1980s when we were studying was the Jurassic times, you know, then my students really enjoy it. That we didn't have any Facebook, we didn't have any mobile, we didn't have GPS, and we traveled the world. And when we traveled the world, there was no GPS. And every time I left home to travel to Europe or USA, my parents wouldn't know where I am for even 6 months or a year, because there's no chance of a phone call. So we are from that world, but enjoying this present digital world also. If you look at so one is, we would say at that time, an architect's imagination moves from a small doorknob to an entire city. That's the range that someone can choose. So there are architects just designing doorknobs, just designing products, just designing lamps, and really transforming life. At the same time, there may be an architect working at urban planning, urban design, imagining an entire future city, or imagining villages, imagining materials. So these are all the choices that influence future prospects. I have students who become very good IAS officers, where even I can learn from them. They become IAS officers and they say, generally a veterinary doctor does IAS and then he's a commissioner of a city. He would find it very difficult to judge an infrastructure project. But now that architects are doing an IAS course, then becoming commissioners, Aime Lerner, who's the mayor of Curitiba, was an architect who would constantly write about his city and saying it's not good, this needs repair. We know. I think the Times kind of puts out, road under repair, this is happening, traffic jam, all these problems. And so he, as an architect, used to write every Saturday in the paper, very much like your Times supplement. And one day, in a frustration, he tells me he stood for elections. He was sure he won't win. And he won with a thumping victory because the entire city had been reading him every Saturday and felt, let's elect this architect and maybe he'll bring some change. He's brought some amazing transformation in his town now, in his city. And so you really see what the potential of an architect is for future. So one is product design, one is heritage. Heritage in tourism is growing now. Journalism is a new field which is growing. So there are many architects who are moving into communication, journalism, content writing, of course, digital field, gaming. I have many students now who got into gaming because you need that, you need those surreal landscapes, you need Greece, you need to recreate it in the digital augmented reality or the virtual reality. So many architects now got into that field. Filmmaking, of course, research, planning of cities, environmental science. I have a friend now who's an advisor to the Prime Minister of Canada, and she is advising on environmental science and policy as an architect. So I think that architectural based landscape, music, of course, many musicians who've been architects, and automobile design. So there are architects now moving into automobile design. So I think the creativity is vast because the 5-year course kind of opens up this interdisciplinary options. And so we have ensured that students in our university can choose that from the first year, second year, and if they wish, can move in those directions. So it's not a singular direction. I think that's what.
Yeah. Thanks, Professor. That was quite insightful. Over to you, Asher. How has the pandemic altered the ways you guys work, architects work?
I think it is that there are two things to this. It is not just how we work, but also the kind of work that we do has undergone quite a bit of change. I think in terms of working, I think the impact has only been a lot more positive because, earlier, architecture is a very collaborative practice. Nobody works in silos. So, having people right here in the same space, in the same room to be able to deliver something was, it was a given. I think we have all learned the advantages of remote working, especially in cities like Bangalore, where commute hours are longer. I think we've all become a lot more flexible, like many other professions also. I would like to say there was a COVID hospital that we did in the beginning of April last year. It was completely, it was unimaginable, but completely done from home in a month. Delivery of everything. We had to repurpose an existing office building into a 450-bed COVID center. I don't think it is possible to even imagine that we could have done that in the month of March, but it was possible to do that. So I think we've all eased out a lot more in that sense, which is great because, I think it is also not just the nature of the practice, but how even people live in cities. We've kind of proven that we could do things like this. In terms of the kind of work that we do, again, I think the level of collaboration has increased a lot more because there are too many more specialists in every field today that you need to plug in. As an architect, you need to almost know it all. And that is why even in a setup of an education sector, you are introduced to a variety of things. In terms of work that we do, it has ranged from, I think office buildings in like smaller cities and all was an upcoming trend, but people have probably done away with those kind of projects for a while now. But we are looking at more infrastructure development projects. Most importantly, a lot of repurposing. Like, I'm sure we've all heard of train bogies being repurposed into COVID centers or medical centers. So, that is also another level of intervention. So it's the kind of projects have also changed, even maybe for a little bit of time. I mean, I don't think, but it has thrown open a lot more possibilities of what you could do. Yeah, I mean, I think we've all learned to ease out a little is a very important thing. I think a lot of people in the profession around it have become a little kinder with reference to deadlines, as doctor was mentioning. So I think we've all learned to respect and accept the more human side of the profession as well, working together, helping each other, watching each other's backs, because there are a lot of times in a meeting room where everybody is pointing fingers at each other for something not being done. But today probably everybody is more like, okay, let's just figure out what's the best way to get this done, because we've had sites that have been shut for a longer period of time, but we know once sites were up and running again, how do we all just align to make up for the lost time? Because finally time is money versus work versus everybody needing the space. So I think we've all learned to work together, professionally, probably kind of revisited how we did work. And I think the impact has definitely been positive in that sense. I mean, though the pandemic is not positive, but how I think we've all geared up to working has been good.
Thank you, Janvi. I think that was interesting, from what you're doing, how you're doing, to what you're doing, the shift the pandemic is about. It's really interesting. So coming back to Professor Bhavne, sir, you mentioned about the way the professional sides have changed in the last few years or decades. So what are the changes that have taken place in the course or curriculum of the degree, BArch degree, in the last few years? If you could throw some light on that.
What is very important in university education, and the architecture also part of the university education, we have to respond to the fast technological development which are taking outside the four walls of the universities and the institutions. Okay. Now the onus is on the people who are responsible for designing the curriculum. Okay. Strangely, the university system doesn't allow you to revise your curriculum so quickly and so fast. But the onus is on the faculty, that yes, there's always flexibility and the liberty the teacher can take. That the onus is on the teacher to bring this, what is happening, what is currently happening in the profession, in the field, in the technological field, to the classroom. Okay. So that is actually a big challenge, actually. And then there is no excuse, but the faculty and the teachers have to meet up to that challenge. Ensure that the latest is being exposed to the students. You cannot go ahead with the stale syllabus for the years and years together. So one thing, that whatever is happening, because we see in some of these universities, the professor will bring the latest publication of the research paper and discuss in the classroom. Okay. And in the building industry also, the changes are happening very fast. The new technology, new material, new concept, new ideology, it is happening very rapidly. So this is a very important challenge for the educational institutions, for the universities. See that the students are given the latest, and the onus is on the teachers, and it is the challenge that they keep themselves abreast that what is happening. So they have to be very alert and vigilant, and always keep your eye and the ears open and see that what are the new things happening in the field, in the profession, and that has to be brought in this one. And another important thing is that the method of knowledge dissemination, that is also, because say that it is no more the blackboard and the chalk piece kind of a thing. Actually, the way you disseminate the knowledge, the pedagogical approaches are changing now. Look at the scenario of your pandemic last 2 years, actually, that suddenly the teachers were caught unaware, actually. Suddenly they were asked that, please, you have to start the classes online. So the many teachers, especially the teachers belonging to the old generation, they really found it very difficult to quickly switch over and taking the classes through the digital mode. So I think we have to now. The thing is that this is going to be the things in the future. Actually, I think it is going to happen. Actually, it is a good thing that I won't say that it's a pandemic is a desirable thing. But the thing is that now every teacher, right from the teacher in the say, kindergarten to a professor, university professor, they know how to deliver through the online platform, how to teach and everything. Of course, that has been challenged in the architectural education. Architecture education, yes, for the time, under the circumstances, we're doing online, but I think it is not the best way to train the architects. Architects cannot be trained online because it is, we say that architecture is a fine arts, one of the fine arts. And fine arts now, then the guru and the shishya, they have to work in proximity. You can't teach a student who is sitting miles away over this one and say that, okay, show me your basic design work, show me your model sometimes. So the thing is that, of course, this time is going to pass quickly, I think. But the thing is, the good thing has happened that now what happened that the teachers and the students have become the more media savvy. We know how to accumulate the knowledge, how to gather the knowledge digitally through the online resources, and how to disseminate it also. So that is a very important thing, that pedagogically also, and the mode of how to teach the student, how to disseminate the knowledge. I think these are some of the good things. But the challenge is that yes, you have to keep your curriculum abreast. Because we are making the students industry ready. I think architecture is one where they say this question is normally raised for the engineers, actually, engineering graduates, when say some top-notch CEO of IT company says that 80% of engineers are not employable, the colleges start shivering. But I think that if you look at the architectural education, we prepare for the industry. Especially we have the say 1 semester internship program where they work in the architect's office. So it means they're right. The very next day of their graduation, they're ready to serve the companies or to serve the industry.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. I think you also touched upon the next question that I have for Professor Balsava there, that how architecture is a stream which relies heavily on on-ground learning. So Professor Balsava, the question is to you, that how have you adopted to the pandemic and online way of teaching in such a stream?
Yeah, I would say that there is no direct substitute to being together in a class. There's no, let's begin with that. So when we go online, we decided not to just convert the studio into an online. It doesn't work. And we needed to look at what's happening around the world and then evolve a pedagogy which meets that. So what we did is, at a very general level, we saw, and this is very simplistic because we're talking to young students. Pre-pandemic, a student tells me that, sir, we were all the time outside. On Saturday, we were in the mall, we were at the beach. We never even knew our home. Some of them may not even know what plants were there in their compound or even know their kitchen prop. So we were always outside in the city and the home was empty. I'm just making a generalization. Suddenly now, everyone is home and our cities are empty. This is an inversion which has never happened in the history of humanity. So what we did is, we in March itself called the home the new laboratory. There's no more home now. Home has become a Times of India International Conference Center. Home has become my shopping mall because I click Amazon and Flipkart. Home has become my cultural center because I open up my screen and I watch an evening opera maybe. Home has become talking to friends. Now the home was never designed to be the entire world. And so we've landed in a year where the home is the school of architecture, home is the city, home is. So what we needed to do is really look into this. And we've had some very amazing, the Council of Architecture and the ministry invited us for a whole series of talks on this. Those who want, it's open source on the council platform on each of these different pedagogies that we've done online and offline. Now, what we've done is every time there was a lockdown removed between student and faculty, we would steal some moments together, come to the campus, meet, build, all that we've done. So we've not really been completely online, and it's been voluntary. So there's not been any force that everyone has to come, but we've kept the contact. At the same time, what we did was in the home. Let's take an example that in history they're discussing the Roman house. Of course, with parental consent, they stuck tape or with bamboo or something and reconstructed the Roman house within their own house. So it's not anymore digital. And suddenly the family thinks they're living in a Roman house. They know what is the room, and it becomes a real feeling. If there was heavy rain, I would request my students, of course, taking all precaution not to get a cold and a fever, to experience the rain. We requested them to see the plants which are there, because I think we've lost connection with nature, which is an important aspect of architecture. And then a student calls back and says, I didn't even know that these trees were there in my garden. So I think a new awakening has happened in the possibilities of the home. And because we opened this today now, our studio is being connected with Venice, with Washington, with Auckland. Right now, there's a Jerusalem studio on. So it's a very, very new combination, which may not have happened because of the pandemic, where our students are cross-culturally talking every day with another culture and realizing how differently they think. And I think many of the classes in the beginning, we were surprised to find there's a student in Kerala. He said, sir, I have to go and stay with my grandmother. She needs looking after. And she was living in a wonderful, old, traditional Kerala home. So we told him, why don't you start, instead of sitting in front of the blank screen like this, start talking to us, walking around the home. And suddenly the grandmother said, no, I want to tell you all that happened in 1920 when we built it or repaired it. The studio and the class lost its boundaries. Now we have a grandfather from the Northeast discussing bamboo. We have a grandmother discussing from Kerala. We have somebody discussing from South Africa. And this is on an everyday basis. So once you do that, you are all the time experiencing a new experience. But we're not substituting the real for the digital. I think that's the biggest error that is probably happening, that we move the real and forget the real for the digital. So sometimes a student tells me, sir, I have no clay in the house to make the model. And then another student calls and says, you know, I requested my mother chapati dough, and now I'm using that as clay and I'm making a model. Why not? Somebody said, sir, I don't have bamboo sticks. And the other person says, no, I have vermicelli, and can I stick that and make a model? Why not? So I think it only, it kind of tests our creativity, tests our resilience. And that's been the learning on the last 1 year for us here. We've kept an open mind. But yes, students have come to the campus, they have built, they have plastered. So all that has happened. So I would say this is the combination of digital and hands-on. I would just like to add one part before we miss it, you know, which I think was the core area of this whole conversation. I would request all parents and students to please register for the NATA exam to be eligible for architecture. The NATA exam is absolutely mandatory, and many parents we find are coming in for admission to schools of architecture without the NATA exam. The NATA exam is conducted by the Council of Architecture. One can Google that website and register for NATA, those parents and students who have not registered for NATA. And that window of opening is, I think these are the last few days. You would have to register today or tomorrow. September 3rd is the exam. I would please request all parents to register. It is absolutely important. There's no other alternative. We get calls from parents and students whether there's another alternative. The council has created a third NATA to deal with this. and please avail of that opportunity and register for the NATA exam. Yeah,
Thank
and the issues we discussed in what requires for an architect:
Yeah.
logic, imagination, mathematical skill, scientific understanding, more or less what they did in 11th and 12th is the
Same.
basis of the NATA exam.
Thank
So I
you.
would please request that.
Yeah, thank you, Professor. That was overall a complete thing for the students, what they have to keep in mind. Coming back to Janvi, we've seen there are what heat waves, floods. So there's this entire, how do I say, the climate change and all this is happening. So with sustainability and climate goals becoming the big talking points, so how are you all, how are the architects bringing all these facets into their work now?
I'm always very surprised by this question because I think architecture, in its essence, stems from where we belong. Architecture is not a created discipline. It always existed. It didn't have a fancy name, but going back to building our shelters, I mean, it had to be based on where we were. Of course, times have changed, your contexts have changed, but I think, and this is what schools teach us, going back to the essence of where we come from, and I think to to really answer this question is just common sense. Just how do we design what is right? I mean, it's I get a lot of projects which says all our buildings should be north south aligned because that's the right way to build. I mean, but there is a drain on your north and a dump on your south. That's not the right way to do it. So it's not simplistic. It's adapting to understanding the principles behind it. Going back to first principles is the way to address any issue that we are facing today. And architecture as a profession has done its bit. I mean, if you look at a 25-year cycle, even when we were studying, I don't think sustainability as a topic was such a big thing, but we learned how to respond to climate. We learned how to respond to vegetation, how to understand vegetation, how to understand how building responds to vegetation. Once we graduated, sustainability was a huge field. Everybody was going and studying sustainability, which is great because somewhere I think modern techniques needed modern level of interventions as well. We had to understand the context again. So as an industry, we have to put it very simplistically, though we do not adhere to some things like this, but there are a lot of rating systems today that help you manufacture and understand how your buildings work. Like in a country where we go and try and understand bike kitna deti hai, to understand building kaise work hoga is equally very important. How much is my cost on energy, cost on water. I think when it started making monetary sense is when the acceptance was very, very high. And, I know a lot of us love to say that, I do not adhere to these kind of rating systems. But what the rating systems have done is at least make the lowest benchmark. You do better than that, very good. But there is no point in dissing these benchmarks and saying that, we are much better than that. Okay, let us just figure out how you are. Now, again, like I say, a 25-year cycle. Today, rating systems, we've all understood how buildings work, how buildings perform. Today, the key is to understand how people perform, which is very funny because that had to probably come first. Today, wellness is something that we are looking at. So I think even the industry kind of defines itself, keeps changing, keeps adapting. Today, people have become the center of design. And this is not even, I'm not even talking about the pandemic. It was even much prior to that the understanding went from, because I think there are enough benchmarks and what is possible. And there's a huge range of people working on different things, which is great. From a screw, which enhances performance because it's given you the correct air gap, to, how a building entirely comes together, or how a group of buildings come together, or how neighborhoods come together. Again, the scales have increased. It's been varied. Of course, a lot of work needs to be done on that front. I'm not saying that we are prepared. But I think at every level, everybody is still working on it. Everybody's, simply speaking, everybody was moving to the cities at one point. Everybody's now understood things like quality of life, which is not quantifiable. So everybody's starting moving away and are not making the same mistakes that we did earlier when we were building our city. I don't think it's a mistake, it's a learning. Let's look at it that way. Everything is a learning. We've learned how to change, adapt, reconfigure, rework. And I think that's how, I think the profession and the schools are doing their bit. Even I think schools, the way we taught climatology is what we called it then, which has now become sustainability, because it adds a lot more other parameters of design understanding. So I think even education system, I think as a doctor and professor both mentioned, it keeps adding these little nuances that as a practitioner, it makes you prepared to deal with it. But at the end of the day, common sense, first principle, design basics. And I don't think that anybody can take away from you. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Asha. We have one more round of questions, but I think we are running short of time. So I request all the panelists to keep the answers short so that we can take some questions from the audience as well. Professor Bhavani, how much of architecture is creativity and how much is analytical thinking?
I don't think that we can really break it up in terms of ratio, 50%, 60%, or 75, 25. Actually, the point here is that, see, architecture, as rightly put by professors, it's a blend of art, science, and technology. Now, the contemporary architecture it heavily depends on technology. It heavily depends on the science also. So it is not merely an art. Okay, or put it that way, that some say that, okay, architecture is an utilitarian art, means finally it has to perform. Okay, say when you look at your creative ability, maybe that for a single solution you may come out with 2 or 3 options, but how do you choose the best one? It is only out of analysis you can do, isn't it? So analysis is very important, because until unless your creative decisions are supported with analytical justifications, I think the building or architecture is not going to function well. Okay, so it's very difficult to say, or you cannot say that 50% analysis and 50% creativity, nothing like that. It heavily dependent on each other, because the important thing that the building, any piece of architecture, has to finally serve to the people, its occupants, isn't it? So the functionality comes into picture. You have to analyze it structurally. You have to certainly analyze it for its various kind of environment which the people are anticipating. That you can say that the acoustics inside the building, the thermal environment inside the building, the visual environment inside the building. So all those things actually, which are highly analytical, scientifically analyzed. Actually, how much light is illumination is created, how much energy is flowing into the space. Okay, whether this structural option is good or the other structural option is economical. So the point here is that yes, the creativity is a very important and fundamental to pleasant architecture, but at the same time, when it comes to functionality, the analysis goes into it, and that only helps you to create the functionally well doing piece of architecture.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bhavani. So coming back to Professor Balsawar, sir, a lot of STEM students from STEM fields are flying abroad for their higher studies. So what are the opportunities for students who are pursuing their undergrad in architecture courses for their maybe master's studies abroad? Sir, you're on mute. Professor Balsawar.
Yeah, I'll be very brief on that, because I think in the earlier part I covered it. There are master's programs in product design. Many go into NID or IDC IIT, or some go to Rotterdam, some go to Eindhoven. So there are one group that does product design. Another group can go to heritage. There are many universities that are doing some amazing master's programs in heritage or project management or urban planning. So urban planning and urban design, there are the SPAs. There's research-based Many I know are going into the Asian College of Journalism and then linking on to Reuters or maybe even Times and Hindu. So that there is landscape design, and of course, several going even for automobile design to Milan or Switzerland. So I think there's a broad range here available. But more, since we have a paucity of time, I would suggest that we have created an open house given the COVID time for this. You could come to our Insta page or the Savita website, where every week there is a series of open house lectures and talks from more than about 100 architects from across the world. And these are free. You do not have to register, so you can come anonymous. You need not share your identity. And these are open. Coming week, we have the president of the council on Wednesday. And then we have Professor B.V. Doshi. We have Peter Rich from South Africa. So these are some of the most, I would say, experienced practices and academicians speaking, essentially to deal with the clarity that is required in the pandemic. So this was something we've done, and every week there are about 4 or 5 lectures, and they're completely free. And I would request anyone who wishes, any school, we have many schools, many heads joining in. It's a collaborative process, and even presenting. I would just request all these issues can be brought up there. We respond, they can come to the campus, and this has been done consciously for the pandemic. And so I think I would wrap with that on future prospects. There's an open house almost every day, clarifying various issues, because I think, yes, of course, there's admission architecture, but from a parent or a student point, I think that decision on what my future career is, what do I do in the future, is a very important decision. It's a decision that needs a lot of questions before deciding. And therefore, we've kept this where they can ask those questions, come to us each time. And I think forums like this are really, they were not there in our time. So while I didn't have, I was influenced by an architect in Goa where I grew up and became an architect. I had no doubt actually. So when somebody says whether you have doubt, architect, engineer, I don't relate to it. But I know that many of my friends have run pillar to post trying to find out what architecture is, what do I do, and all kinds. And I think the panelists today, architect Janvi and Dr. Bhavani, have really enriched this conversation, because this is something which was not available some time back. And I think
that's true.
This is the future prospect. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Zashar, my last question actually is the same as one of our audience has asked, so I'll just club both of them together. My question is, how important is it to work with a reputed architectural firm once you graduate? How do you build your career? One of our audience, Maunika, she's asked the same thing, how to start building a career after completing a graduation degree. What should I do in the first 1 or 2 years after graduating?
Most importantly, after 1 or 2 years that you graduate, please work. Most of the people I know after 5 years of, I think it is one of the longest courses, because most others are 4 years and this is 5 years, think that, it's best to take a break and come back and figure out what you want to do. But you are not going to be able to figure out what you want to do if you do not work. Stay at it. I think that is the most important thing. Work for a reputed firm or no? Yes and no, because, it's like choosing a teacher. Reputation for what is very, very, very important. You could want to go to the hills and learn a craft. That's equally valid, because that could be your trajectory post finishing architectural studies, like your degree that you get. So I think, like I said, even as an answer to my first question, it's such a large spectrum that you need to be constantly at it to work in. And please, one of the most important, please don't keep jumping what you do, because you are not going to be able to learn something. It's like any other profession, you need the rigor to be able to figure out what you want to do. And and nobody's trajectory will be the same as yours. I graduated with a class of 40. I don't think any one of us have done exactly the same thing. There are 40 different, and I mean, that's one college. So there are so many, everybody does different things. But I think you should not be too hard on yourself, because it's not going to be like one of those professions where you come out and you know exactly what you want to do. You have to allow yourself that kind of time to be flexible, to learn. Please attend lectures, because I think we at that time, because we had no internet and Facebook, and we went physically every week to attend lectures, listen to people. I think listening, I mean, nothing can take the place of listening to people who have been in the profession for a really long time. Gurus are very important because they teach you, throughout. You learn, and now it is easier. Now it is much easier with the kind of platforms Professor was mentioning. You get to know so much in advance. I mean, I have had friends in class who keep saying that, oh, my students already knew about this. So it's for teachers also, it's not a very easy time. But I think the most important thing is completely be at it, reputed or not reputed. You feel you're learning something very important for you. Everybody can teach you something, just to go back to the cliche. So yeah, just don't be too hard on yourself and keep at it is very important.
All right. There's one more question from the audience. Rahul Shastri asks, what should an architecture student do to specialize in interior design? Who would like
Work
to
on
take?
more projects once you finish. Work with people who are
Could
doing that.
I?
Intern. Yeah, go ahead. Go
No,
ahead.
Yes, sir.
yeah, I think while we discuss interior projects, it's important to discuss because maybe the profession today is engaged more with interior projects. But our take is really, it's good not to separate interior, exterior, landscape. It's a holistic inhabitation. So one is a part of the other. And if one wanted to, one can always specialize in the interior. And I feel that schools of architecture give a good grounding to understand the interior, whether it is product design, whether it is detailing, whether it is the workshop that they have, whether it is different kinds of interiority, the interior of a hospital, the interior of a home. And I think if one begins to see the idea of interior design in a little larger or a holistic way, and I think architect Janvi would kind of reinforce me on that, because they're in the practice, and that separation of interior and architecture, I'm not too sure. I know it's happening, but we generally ask them to understand the entirety, of which the interior is a part. And those who are really interested in interior or product design, or I have found most of my students who get excited by interior, surprisingly going and joining IDC IIT to learn product design, or they join NID, or they join Shrishti, because they don't want to learn interior. They want to learn the product. They want to learn the material. They want to learn how to collaborate with maybe an amazing carpenter from Rajasthan, and you want to collaborate with some amazing stonework from Andhra. And because these are building traditions over centuries. And so a lot of learning for architects comes in collaborating with these buildings, building practices for centuries. I know I have a Rajasthani carpenter who's 85 years old, and the amount of knowledge and experience he carries about wood is simply amazing. A 5-year course cannot kind of complete that knowledge. So you really work with them, you kind of learn, but at the same time you're collaborating at different levels. So I think if we can open up this idea of interior, and I hope Times can bring many more of such debates on interior or on other aspects, we could dwell more light on it. And because I think interior is there are enough courses, but I still request everyone to look at it from a more holistic point and then come to the interior. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have crossed our time limit. It's time to wrap up. I would like to thank all three of our panelists for joining us today. It was a pleasure listening to you. Trust me, this is very insightful. Thanking you once again. That's all from Mission Admission from us right now. We will all see you later. Thank you once again.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
It was a
Very
pleasure
much.
to be on this platform.
Pleasure
Yeah.
and
Thank you. Thank you very
wonderful,
much.
wonderful